Hi, I'm Leonie Rosenstiel, and this is my story of unlocking success. Well, the invitation to write the chapter in Unlocking Success came after I had a couple of bestsellers, Protecting Mama and Legal Protection, under my belt, and Jack had helped me with both of those, and I was working on a third one. And as I was finishing the third one, I got the invitation to contribute a chapter to this book, Unlocking Success. And I was delighted that it had all of these wonderful people who had also unlocked their own successes, and I really wanted to join them and talk about how I unlocked mine. Most people are completely unaware of what's waiting for them as their relatives age. They may not be aging, but their relatives are. And so they're blindsided when something happens. There's an accident, a physical accident, or one of their relatives develops dementia. And I can help to guide them because I had that happen. And I spent 14 years in the system that we call elder care and taking care of our loved ones. And I saw all the things that can go wrong because pretty much all of them happened to me and my family. The best idea, of course, is to prevent the problem. You can't necessarily prevent aging, but you can prevent some of the problems that come with misunderstanding what's going on, like denying that someone is failing or forgetting things for a long period of time until there's an emergency. My mother was taken under the control of a state-appointed guardian, and it came about in a very convoluted way that I can describe very briefly here. She began to become forgetful. She was a college professor and had retired from that and became forgetful. She couldn't find her way back to the table in a restaurant, and various assorted things that most people don't have trouble with, she suddenly had trouble with. We tried to ignore it, which was not possible, starting the day that I came into her house to take her to lunch and discovered that there was blood all over the place. And my mother was standing in the kitchen, staring at the wall and bleeding. She wasn't aware where she was. She wasn't moving. She didn't try to get any help. She had cut herself badly. She had almost sliced off a piece of her thumb. I got her to urgent care, and I started hearing dementia from the doctor. And that started a whole process that developed into a situation where she didn't understand what was going on and was taken into a guardianship appointed by the state. It was impossible for me to do what I did. In fact, Jack Canfield told me that he never knew anyone who had managed it. The state likes to keep all guardianship records secret, and we've had a lot of public cases in which we've seen that happen. Every guardianship, they want to keep the record secret. And that my mother's guardianship was no exception to that rule. The problem was I had promised her I would write a book about it. And I couldn't do that if all the records were secret. Then it becomes a story, your story and my story, and it doesn't become documented. And so I decided I wanted the records released. They put a specific gag order on me as well as on the records to prevent me from speaking. And against all odds is the story of how I beat the gag order and got my freedom of speech back, or I wouldn't be sitting here recording anything, because I wasn't allowed to speak about my family, my mother, or anything relating to the subject of guardianship, literally by court order. It changed the direction of my life. I had been a practitioner of Oriental medicine, I had been a musician, I had been a writer, I had been all those other things, but I hadn't directed my attention toward elder care and what happens to families as elders age. And it directed my attention with great force toward those subjects, as opposed to just writing about anything that I happen to find interesting. I found this compelling because I discovered so many other people were having problems in this area. And of course, the best time to know about the area is before you're in the middle of an emergency, because emergency decisions tend to be not very well considered, and you're grabbing at the first person who gives you advice. And that can often be very bad advice. I've written it for anybody who has older relatives or remembers what happened with elder relatives and wonders why. Because there are both categories of people. And all of us have had someone who's older that we care about. And sometimes you wonder, why did they disappear? What happened to them? In my mother's case, I was not allowed to see her for almost 3 years. She was kept pretty much secret by the guardian, by the people who were controlling her. And that happens a lot with older people who are taken into a guardianship, that there's a loneliness and a sequestration. They're kept away from people. This is a distillation of my experience. Protecting Mama was about my experience with my mother and primarily what she was going through and how it affected my functioning and my husband and all kinds of other people who were involved. The second book, Legal Protection, I wrote because I discovered that so many people have no contact with attorneys except in emergency situations when they're making bad decisions. And so the idea was to make sure that people had access to proper legal advice all along without breaking the bank. And the third one, They're Coming for Your Elders and Your Inheritance, is an overview of the whole field. And so this chapter that I wrote for Jack is primarily how I came through this, what techniques I used, and how they helped me so they can help others. I hope they decide to get information before they need it, if possible, because you never know what's going to happen even later today, much less 5 years from now. And if you plan very well for 5 years from now, when you get to the 5th year, things may change again. And so you plan on the fly, but you plan with information. You plan with direct knowledge of the situation. I'm Leonie Rosenstiel, and this is my story of unlocking success.